This is Shaky Town. Happy
Hello.
Friday the 13th.
Oh,
That's when we're
spooky.
yes.
That's obviously when people are listening to this too, because they just jump on these. Friday the 13th is a day.
Well, we have a lot more people listening and watching because we did a subscriber drive, and I'm happy to report
Everybody gets a tote bag.
we've
Wait,
inc-
what?
we've increased our subscriber base by 10%.
So 4 people. No, I don't know. I don't know, man. It's fine.
It's hard to get eyes and ears on the internet in the modern age when
Yes.
you're
Just a lot of
competing with
comments.
such great content as I can't even finish the joke.
There's no great content. What
Yeah.
great content is there? None. Zero.
I can tell you one piece of content I enjoyed this week and have a lot to say about, but I want to hear what you have to say about it first. So I don't think we're even going to bother talking about Time Person of the Year because they picked Trump, and that's just silly.
Whatever.
But,
Hitler was the person of the year, so
exactly. But they did an Athlete of the Year, and they picked Indiana Fever player, NBA Rookie of the Year, Caitlin Clark. Not on the Olympic team, not on Team USA, but
yeah.
was on the All-Star team, which ended up beating Team USA before their gold medal run. Gene, I sent you this article. What
Mm-hmm.
are your thoughts on it? Because then I could tell you about my thoughts and some of the backlash from the article.
Oh, I didn't realize there. Well, obviously, I think backlash is a really good word because there's, I know she's a phenom. I know that she is one of the drivers to popularizing. Well, okay, let me kind of go back to the prehistoric age. One, I guess I didn't realize that the WNBA has been around for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, that's kind of good and kind of bad. That but it kind of only feels like it's been around for 5 years.
Yeah, it's definitely only
Uh,
been zeitgeist for the last few and been on
yeah,
my radar in particular the last few. But
yeah. But it's because uh, the fact that it's a going concern is interesting to me because I'm we've talked about this before. I'm not really a sports guy. There's a couple things I could pay attention to, but I'm not really a sports guy. So, but I always kind of lump the WNBA in with all of those football leagues that pop up and go away, like USFL, the whatever, arena football, but the fact that it's been around for a while is I found interesting because I was like, oh, but the backlash part, uh, I guess I didn't realize how she's a phenom and she's a great ball player. I guess I didn't realize how much uh, shit she's gone through and how much shit she's given to people. I didn't really, obviously you're playing at the top of your game, and you're got a lot to prove. People are going to get in your way, but the fact that she's such a fierce competitor and in a much more traditional kind of like you know in your face kind of way, I did not realize. Yeah, I didn't. Her personality, it makes a hell of a lot of sense because I do feel like you
very
know
alpha.
yeah, very alpha, and very focused. Obviously, you're going to be a pro athlete. You're going to be both of those things. Um, uh, but I guess I didn't. That side of her personality wasn't something that I had heard because I basically just heard she's like the Michael Jordan of women's basketball, and that kind of thing. With not a lot of the background of who she is, where she came from, and that sort of thing. So I found that really fascinating.
Um,
Um, yeah.
she is a young white woman in a league with many
I,
black men.
I
And
don't see color, Brody. I don't.
the only color you see is green.
That's right.
Um,
Dollar bills, y'all.
right, exactly. Like
Sorry, and I also let me apologize. I have a cold, so
you're
I am
good.
going to be schnurfling and making terrible noises.
No worries. I like how Caitlin Clark plays. She has a determination and integrity that I think some of her teammates don't. I'm not a big fan of how the Fever plays. I'm not a big fan of a lot of Eastern Conference type playing, except for the Liberty. The Washington Mystics are probably the worst offenders of what I call dishing it out and not taking it. They
Ah,
will foul and they will elbow in, and they will, and the Indiana Fever specifically will start fights. I have seen them start two fights with the Mercury. And then, like, but if you touch them a little bit, suddenly they're Glass Joe and they're
yeah.
all
Oh,
flopping.
foul, foul.
Yeah. And it's silly. And, I mean, I've certainly seen Mercury players get worked up about calls that they don't agree with. We have Sophie Cunningham, who has like literally like got thrown out of games last season for arguing and making, facial expressions. But like, Caitlin Clark has stayed out of the fray of that. People will also say that her teammates have not stepped in on her behalf when people like Kennedy Carter um, would mess with her. Kennedy Carter famously hip checked her.
Oh
Kennedy
yeah,
Carter
that
from the
was
Chicago Sky.
yeah. I did. I watched that video after it was
Yeah.
mentioned in the article, and it is just like what? Like you can't like. There's just zero justification for something like that.
Yeah. Um, and but what you got were all these new fans who, like Taylor Swift fans following the Kansas City Chiefs, suddenly cared about WNBA and Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark, and would even go so far as to say that that's all they cared about.
Yeah,
And as soon as the Fever were eliminated from the playoffs, they said, "Oh, I'm not watching the rest of the season." Like they were totally checked out. And it was
yeah,
a lot of white women and white men, and you know, they would call black players thugs, and there is, whether you like it or not, a racialized aspect to that certain term.
yeah,
In calling any
yeah.
black person in this country a thug.
Unless you're referring to someone who is in the cult of Kali and does ritual strangling, calling someone a thug is pretty loaded around these parts.
Yes. Um,
No offense to any of my ritual murder worshiping deity of death and destruction, fans. We of which I'm sure we have many.
I'm,
I
I'm
did. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I felt like I was a little bit of a delay. I think I'm caught back up now. Sorry.
Okay.
Um,
I did. You mentioned that I wrote a few notes about the article as I was going through, and I will read verbatim.
yeah.
Also, I am relieved that people finally have a player that they can use as a straw man for furthering their racist beliefs. Phew. Yeah. So yeah,
And
I definitely that was a current that ran through that article where it's like gross behavior from gross people.
yeah. And Caitlin Clark again above the fray. She's like, no,
Yeah.
I idolized black women
Yeah.
growing up watching this league, and I idolized the black women I play with and play against. And then all of a sudden, these people were like, "Oh, Caitlin's a race traitor."
I,
Woke.
is there nothing? Is there nothing less interesting than your bog standard white supremacist? Like it, there, I kind of feel like it's horrible, and it's morally reprehensible and it's repugnant, but it's also like it's so A to B. It's such an easy lift of, you know, Jews control the banks and the media, and no race traders and all that. I mean, it is such a lazy ass way to be. It's yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I
Uh,
not only disavow racism, but I also call it out for being just shitty lazy.
yeah. Yeah. Now here's another goofy thing. I wouldn't say equally goofy, just kind of I more shrug at it because there's no real like institutional power dynamic behind it.
Right.
But there are a lot of black WNBA fans who are saying, "Hey, too little, too late. We don't care that Caitlin Clark has said this now." And there's even like players and coaches who are kind of throwing shade on it. The coach of the Washington Mystics, my least favorite WNBA team, came out today and said that Time Athlete of the Year should not have focused on one athlete, and it should be all
It should be
100.
Donald Trump. We know it should be Donald Trump.
She said all 100 plus WNBA players belong on that cover, and it's like, first of all, your team sucks. I hate the Mystics. Um, they're the worst. Also, like, no, it's okay. It's okay for a Muhammad Ali or a Michael Jordan or a gosh, I mean, name the sport. There's somebody who's
Yeah, no. And
taken.
OJ Simpson.
I prefer more his movie work, but
Exactly. No, yeah. I mean that's again, it's you're kind of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And we live in such an age where, rightly or wrongly, everybody has an axe to grind. And it's like I do feel that the thing that I got out of that article is she's there to play ball,
yeah,
right? And she's there to be the best basketball player she can be. And you know, whether too little too late, or whether people are dragging their own baggage around her stuff, she's just gonna keep doing what she does. And I think that's that's an increasingly rare occurrence to find someone who's so focused, or doesn't get goaded into scruffling around in the mud. um, and presuming that she can keep that up. I think that's an admirable trait in someone, especially these days where you know anyone with a media presence over and above a gopher poking its head out of the hole is asked to comment on what's your views on the Palestinian situation. And it's like I'm here to play basketball, kind of thing. So it's admirable that she's like, look, this is about, they can say what they want, and I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to go play basketball. So
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
I will say I'm really interested to see Stephanie White just left the Connecticut Sun, which I believe was the team that actually eliminated the Fever in the playoffs. She is now the Fever coach. They got rid of the very divisive Christy Sides, who was just known for or I should say reputed for not do, doing the rotational players well. She made some moves that would really make people question why she was taking certain players in, taking certain players out. So with Christy Sides out of the picture, Stephanie White is in, and they've also already let so there was the expansion draft, which I want to transition and talk to you really quick. Golden State Valkyries is going to be a new team next season, and they're allowed to pick one player from each team. I will say it was really hilarious that they looked at the Seattle Storm and said pass. They chose nobody from the Storm, and that's probably because they protected a bunch of their decent players, and the players that they had left were just not fitting the scheme. But as a Phoenix-born person, it's in my blood to hate Seattle basketball. I was astonished when my son's basketball team, they get to pick their team name every season, and they picked the Supersonics, and I had a heart attack. But what are you going to do? So the player, Tammy Pegmenley, and I am mispronouncing that name, I'm sure. Tammy, good old Tammy from the Fever, they did not protect her. And she's a good player, but hasn't, I guess, had much time.
Right.
The Valkyries ended up picking a lot of what are called international players, which means WNBA American teams have the right to use them if they're willing to play in the WNBA that year, but they're often playing in Spain or France, or they're playing for their international leagues.
Right.
And so there's a question of whether or not a couple of these draft picks from the the Valkyries are even going to be actually available to play in the WNBA.
Hmm.
Um,
That's
but
not going to short. That's not necessarily going to short their roster though, because I presume that they have. It's not just the people who are on the court. It's like, oh, we have to forfeit because someone's car broke down. It's
yeah,
not
yeah,
like some pickup league at the Y, I imagine.
right, which I've seen happen.
Sure.
No. Like if anything, they picked smartly because another thing that factors in is the salary cap.
Oh,
Like
right.
if somehow all the most expensive players had not been protected and were available, and the
Mhm.
Valkyrie picked all of them, you now don't have any more money to spend on other players.
Yeah.
So they picked a like they have a lot of spending money going into the season. There's going to be a lot of free agents. So, I'm not saying they have their pick, but they have a big wallet in the market. Um, they took Monique Billings from the Mercury, which I love Monique. Monique got to meet Monique. She signed my son's basketball. She's great. She's like 6'4". She's, amazing. But she kind of got bounced around teams last season. And
Like a basketball?
yes, very much like a basketball gets bounced. And and I love Mo and the Mercury finally did get their clutches on her for most of the end of the season, but like they didn't put her on the protected list. So she was the one unrestricted free agent. The Valkyries could pick one unrestricted free agent. That's who the Valkyries picked. They put together this team that's very much veterans.
Mm-hmm.
People were surprised that they didn't pick a lot of young talent. They picked a lot of veteran talent, and older, by the way, being like, "Oh, she just turned 30." Ooh,
Yeah. At
yeah.
least, at least the it's the same for the women athletes as like the men, where it's like he's an old man going on 35 years old in this team. It's like like he's barely able to rent cars, man.
Exactly. But like, so the fact that the Fever let Tammy go, like, they maybe Stephanie White is envisioning a different kind of team for the
Yeah,
Fever. Maybe they'll be less punk ass bitches is what I was gonna say. That seems so mean to say about nice young ladies, but I'm sorry, they flop and they whine. So
yeah.
hopefully I could ask,
Being a good sport is an important part of athletics, in my
yeah.
opinion.
If she gets them to flop less, then that'll be great. If people rally
Yeah,
around Kirkman more, then that's fine. But I'm saying
yeah,
we're just the Mercury and the Valkyries and the Liberty this season. So.
yeah. Yeah, I'm going back to my notes from the article. I'm just glad that Clark has been able to open the doors to monetizing the WNBA and hopefully making their tickets and merchandise as unaffordable as the men's have for decades.
Oh, they're getting there. I'm seeing
Yeah,
rise, like
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'm very lucky to have been hooked up by friends to one in particular to see Mercury this last season, and
yeah.
but I um my wife grabbed some sort of deal on Mercury tickets for Christmas. That's kind of like her gift to me and my son. This he doesn't know yet, um,
Oh, nice. Well,
unless he's
so
listening, which he's not.
he was listening to the podcast. Friend of the podcast.
But yeah, so we'll be getting to go some more games. She asked me which ones I wanted to see, and I said I'd love to see the Mercury play if the tickets are available because it's kind of like one of those deals where you get like a deal on multiple games for this
Yeah,
season.
block of games. Yeah.
Yeah, depending on availability. So like I want to see them play the Valkyries because it's going to be an exciting team to see, and we'll see how all the salary cap,
How it meshes out. Yeah.
draft picks, trades, but it'll be an interesting team no matter what happens. The Liberty, and I do want to see the Fever play in person. I'd love to see Caitlin Clark play in person. And then second to that, the Aces, because Las Vegas has a great team. Kelsey Plum, AJ Wilson. Um, it'd be just interesting to watch. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but that's kind of like the sports angle. I do kind of want to touch briefly upon Luigi Mania. And I got to be careful because I may or may not have entered a business relationship where it may or may not be appropriate for me to speak on um, certain industries and certain people who might be mourning their friend and colleague
Hmm.
who may have passed away in said industry. Um,
Is
I
this where you announce you just got hired as the CEO of United Healthcare?
yes,
Ah,
yeah. I mean, um, if you couldn't tell from the shirt, um, which is very much healthcare related.
yes.
The Friday the 13th Jason Voorhees mask shirt. Um, but I mean, prior to that
Look,
alleged prior to that alleged relationship or not, um, which I could talk to you about more off air. Like I had
sure.
even said before, I have certainly many bad things to say about how the healthcare industry is run. I am not necessarily a fan of extrajudicial murder, and like think that living in a climate of terror isn't the best, but it's also not new. I think one of the really poignant things somebody said is, "Oh, well, CEOs are now having to deal with what like school children have been dealing with for
Yes.
decades."
Yeah.
But would they caught Luigi? Maybe. There's already conspiracy theories about whether or not it's him.
Whatever, man. I mean, that whatever was for again. I come back to the how boring are people who see conspiracies and everything, because it's again just like knee jerk white supremacism, just like be being skeptical is one thing. Wanting more data and knowing what reliable data is another thing. But immediately gainsaying anything that comes down the pike is the laziest. It's probably right above being a knee jerk racist. But yeah, so whatever, conspiracy theories are going to be whatever. I the part that um the thing that struck me about it is where he's being held in Pennsylvania is a notoriously bad jail. And the other prisoners, are complaining on his behalf that he's being treated poorly in a place that's known for treating prisoners poorly. Like that to me is like Luigi Mania, but it's like he's he's struck a nerve. I mean, and really, the way the media has been portraying him, and this manifesto, this 260 word manifesto, which is basically like healthcare makes too much money and they do it by doing evil things. Like that is not a like, yeah, you pretty much wrapped it up in a nice little bow. Like you didn't need a 500 you know single spaced 500 page single spaced with crab notes in the like a Necronomicon and the margins. Like, yeah, it's like this dude sucks and his company sucks and their business practices suck. Like, but the way they're portraying it's like this unhinged manifesto, you know, is really telling that we're basically in a place where unless you're getting your news from like Agent France Press or the Associated Press, unless you're getting it from a wire service where the editorializing is kept to the minimum, you're getting garbage. You're getting hot garbage that is every news outlet is run by a billionaire, you know, or multi millionaire,
Yeah.
close to a billionaire. So they're of course going to be like, this man needs to be hung from the yard arm. It's like, yeah, because he murdered one of your own. He murdered one of your cronies, and one of the people who, and of course my good friend of the show, Elon Musk, um, with his, uh, CEOs need to be ruthless, and it's like because they have to deliver profit to shareholders, and it's like one, you're projecting again, and two, it's like no, they don't. Like counterpoint, it's life isn't a zero sum game. It's like there's enough to go around, and 15% profit. What's the difference between 10% profit and 15% profit? It might be millions of dollars at the top of the line, but it's not worth people's lives. You know, so yeah, I just it's very telling, and the reactions people are having are they're making my heart light.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I've known some pretty insane CEOs in real life. I've known some really nice ones. I've known ones who were skeptical of capitalism and just wanted to run a good company and sell a good product.
yeah,
And yeah, it like anything else, it's a spectrum of personalities and morality. Um, no different than coworkers. I always say that I've liked 99 out of 100 or 999 out of 1,000 of the people I've worked with. And there you
yeah,
get the occasional oddball or just outright jerk, but like
yeah.
I don't know. I I think people are typically good people, but unfortunately just a lot of the money and a lot of the profile are on the ones who are not. And the fact that, that those prisoners are speaking out for Luigi, and um it makes me wonder if there will be a better conversation in 2025 about prison reform. I doubt it, but you never know. It could come up.
We're in 2025. We're going to be talking about concentration camp reform because
Well,
we're going to have detention centers and welcome centers or whatever bullshit thing the felon's going to call them. Um, you know, that's I we're not going to have any useful conversations. I feel
especially as I
that's me being cynical, but I feel like that's it's going to be a fact. We're going to be trying to damage control the damage that's tearing through what remains of our government. Um, to talk about things like that. So I mean, I I I I feel like the commoditization of human beings is the problem, and it's very easy for people in any industry to look at the bottom line and say, well, we have to shave 10% off of these costs, and those costs are people, and I think that's the problem. And like you say, I've only met a half a dozen people in my 40-year career working in the world that I've been like, oh yeah, that person needs to be hit by a bus. Like they do nothing good for anyone around them. Like it's like look, they take care of their dog. Maybe that's the limit of their altruism. But I do think there are a lot of people who are cogs in those machines who for because they're just doing their job. It's like actuarial tables, and those actuarial tables say we don't pay you because you're just going to die before you can sue us, and that makes the profit tick up slightly. So I think the idea that there's another way to do things, you know it wasn't very long ago that there were social programs, and social programs weren't necessarily looked at as a constant evil needing to be squelched. That needs to change. And I feel like people are starting to realize, hey, why does somebody have literally thousands of times the wealth of someone in the middle class, not even the poor people, where they have tens of thousands of times the wealth? It's like, how is that a good thing? So that I hope is something that goes on. And if things remain unfair, I hope more people realize, you know, giving billionaires more money is not the answer to anyone's problem. You know, how to buy a bigger yacht is not an important social issue.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, as we come close to the end of this episode, and I'm hoping we can get together another time before the holiday. Um, what else has been on your radar or on your screen?
What has been going on? Again, I'm sick, so the last day and a half, and it hit me yesterday afternoon. So like the last 20 hours has been like ridiculously, like my brain is completely empty. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of anything interesting that's happened. I got nothing. Let me do my notes. I wrote some notes down.
All I've been doing is like in final rounds of interviews.
Mm-hmm.
I hinted at, and by the time this airs, who knows which place I will be wearing a hoodie from with their logo. But watching a lot of Red Letter Media. I've really been enjoying their YouTube channel, and yeah, just keeping up on sports. Oh, I know what I was going to talk about.
Oh,
Ryan,
sure.
a friend of the show. We haven't seen Ryan in a while. He had moved back to Arizona for a little bit. He's on his way to North Carolina, which is actually where he had been after Los Angeles
Hmm.
for a while. But Ryan is a friend of ours who Emmy Award-winning writer for the James Corden Show. His comedy partner Ron Babcock, they were Modest Proposal, and was also on the show. Individually and as a duo, they've been on our show, and Ron's doing great stuff. I always just tell people like,
Devil sticks. Just
well, Muppet Babies. He was on Muppet.
tiny fuppets.
Yeah. But yeah, I want to say this. So I had a really great time just hanging out with Ryan and friends of ours. And it just reminded me that like, oh, I am capable of being in a social situation and being comfortable, enjoying
Uh,
conversation. It's not like I have all these awkward dealings with human beings. I just am so used to being indoors that like I
yeah.
actually venture out of the house. But no, yeah, it was great to see Ryan. I'm sharing a picture for our video feed at this point. They'll
Oh, I'm
see.
looking at it. Wow, look at that. That's a
Yeah,
picture.
you saw the picture earlier this week, and the other gentleman in the picture is the great one, a comedian who's.
Jackie Gleason. No, wait.
But yeah, so that was a cool thing, and then I got an email from Jen Kirkman's mailing list I was going to tell you about. I don't know if
Oh,
you're all
sure.
on that list. She's retired from stand up, and she's pretty much just sticking with television writing,
Hmm.
and she does shows that have to do with like self-care and mental health as far as like
Yeah,
her podcasts and merch that she sells. But Jen
yeah,
Kirkman was like one of the early guests on the show,
yeah,
and somebody I met and knew through Modest Proposal, and actually like hung out with a few times
yeah.
socially.
She's cool. I like her.
Yeah, we like Jen, we like Ryan. And I just wanted to give an update and
Yeah,
sure how much of that you already knew about her that we had talked about.
yeah. I knew. She's got an ADHD based podcast that
Yes.
I see um, her Instagram stuff talking about things, which I find she's always got something interesting to say, and one of the most interesting things that came out of that was I can't remember who she had on, some neurologist was talking about it. I believe it was a neurologist who was saying that um, one of the reasons why folks with attention span disorders uh, do things at the last minute is because adrenaline is self-medication, which I was like, oh yeah, yeah, I feel that as someone who has ADHD. I'm like, yeah, yep, you can focus. So yeah, no interest. She does interesting stuff, and it's always nice to see her pop up various places. And yeah, I know that person.
Yeah. Well, Gene and I will be happy to pop up on your screens or your podcast feeds again
Yeah,
soon. But I think for now, this is the end of today's Shaky Town Radio.
yeah, that's the thing. Uh, yeah, yeah. I'm just zoned out. I'm gonna go take a shower and take a nap.
Awesome, awesome. I was gonna say I'll join you, but that would be weird.
That would be a little weird. Also, very difficult to do.
Yeah, there might be a room issue there. But thanks for visiting
Bye,
Shaky Town.
everybody. Bye, everybody. I'm waving to the camera. You can't see it. If you're seeing video, you know I'm waving.
We are back on the YouTube channel. We are back in the podcast feed, and we are also on social media on X and on Instagram at Shaky Town Radio. There's a blue sky as well, so check that out and read up all on the archives at shakytownradio.com.